Hi, John. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. So today we're doing this series that it's our success stories on Geyser, and today we're featuring my first Bitcoin and John. First, John, if you could do a little presentation, tell us a little bit about yourself and about your work on the Bitcoin space and with my first Bitcoin.
Yeah, sure. Um, my name is John. Originally from New York. I uh, moved to El Salvador in 2021 to found my first Bitcoin, which is an international Bitcoin education nonprofit. Uh, we have educated tens of thousands of students here in El Salvador, and more recently, we've transitioned to kind of a train the trainers sort of mentality, empower those who empower others. So actually, quite a bit in common with Geyser, right? Uh, our our mission is to make it easier for independent Bitcoin educators everywhere.
Perfect. That's so nice. I actually had the chance to go to El Salvador last year and see a little bit about your work. So super cool. The first thing that I wanted to ask is what originally inspired you to launch my first Bitcoin and dedicate yourself into the Bitcoin education theme? And is there any specific moments that made you see that education was the key to adoption?
Yeah, few questions there. So if I miss one, I'll circle back to it if you could remind me. So I'll start at the beginning and answer what made me want to found my first Bitcoin. And it was founded in 2021, and I think that that was a crucial time, right? So I'm from New York originally. I was there. I kind of got stuck there while I was visiting during. I got stuck there during the pandemic, um, and I was a Bitcoiner prior to that, but the pandemic gave me a lot of time to reflect on the state of the world and what was wrong and how perhaps we could course correct. And my conclusion was that the main problem in the world was that the individual had lost agency in their own lives, and that leads to a lot of negative second order effects. And the solution is Bitcoin education, because Bitcoin education changes how you view yourself, right? It changes once you understand that you could control your money, which is this foundational aspect of life. Money and power are synonymous, right? So if you can control your money, you can control your power. You have agency in your life. Once you have agency in your life, then it flips from having negative second and third order effects to having positive second and third order effects. It makes you a better person. So the time was right. I actually moved to, or I kind of lived on and off in Ecuador for a number of years. And at the tail end of the pandemic, I moved to Ecuador and still thinking through this Bitcoin education project. And I tried to get things started there, but the time and the place weren't right. Um, there were still a lot of COVID era restrictions, and my idea was to do things in person, which was problematic in February, March of 2021 in Ecuador. So when El Salvador made the announcement at the Bitcoin conference in June 2021 that they were going to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, it seemed, I knew the time was right. 2021 seemed like the right time, and El Salvador seemed like the right place then. So I moved to El Salvador before the law went into effect. So I moved there in August. The law went into effect in September. And my idea then was one, that Bitcoin education is needed. It will help us course correct. And that it was an idea whose time had come, right? And we were really happy we had pretty quick growth here in El Salvador. It was a pretty unique place in 2021, 2022, because almost no one knew anything about Bitcoin, but almost everyone was curious about it, which was kind of the perfect environment to start educating people about Bitcoin. And that taught us a lot. That taught us, those first couple of years taught us a lot about how to educate and how to empower people via Bitcoin education, which is why we have transitioned to this fully international model, because this isn't a change that needs to happen in one community or one corner of the world. It's something that is global and international, and we want to make it easier to spark that change for anyone, anywhere.
That's actually very cool, and it's super interesting to see how you guys do that. Last year, I remember I was there during the adopting Bitcoin, so I saw a bunch of people from my first Bitcoin there. A lot of the kids helped, and we were gonna go to the graduation. We ended up not going, but it was very nice to see those kids in the conference, and it was very nice. And one topic that I really want to tackle in also is the grassroots adoption and everything related to that, which I think you guys do it super well. You often emphasize how grassroots education is the foundation of meaningful Bitcoin adoption, as you were saying before. Why do you think starting from the ground up is so critical, especially in an emerging market like El Salvador?
Yeah, because people come to Bitcoin for different reasons. One of the great things about Bitcoin is there's something for everyone, right? Like, we disagree about everything else, but Bitcoin will serve me, and it will serve you, and it will serve this other person. But I think that the most important aspect, the most revolutionary aspect about Bitcoin is its potential to empower, and Bitcoin education is a means to that end. But all Bitcoin education is good, but I think if your focus, if your objective is empowerment, then it needs to be grassroots. It needs to be bottom up. It needs to be community led. We're entering into a very interesting time period where I think corporations and governments will increasingly see how they could benefit from Bitcoin adoption, and they will have their own incentives and motivations. And at the end of the day, it's good for Bitcoin, it's good for the world, because more people are motivated to help bring this new system forth. But they're never going to be focused on empowerment, right? Like, the dynamic of corporations and governments is to consolidate power, to consolidate control, they're self-interested. So it's really important, especially in these early stages of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's only 15 years old at this point, or a little bit more, but it's not super entrenched like it is in the fiat world. That Bitcoin education can actually be grassroots first. It can actually be led by the community. I think education in the fiat world and the legacy world is broken. And one of the reasons why it's broken is it has been captured by its funders, which in education, it's usually government, but there might be some corporate influence as well. And their incentive is not to empower others. Their incentive is to consolidate power. So it's really important that we have this foundation within Bitcoin education. It's great if government supported Bitcoin education exists. It's great if corporate supported Bitcoin education exists. But it's so important that it's not just that there is also community grassroots led Bitcoin education.
What have been the toughest challenges in building and scaling my first Bitcoin, and how did you overcame it?
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge, well, there's a few big challenges. One is just getting started. That's one of the hardest things, is to just get off of zero. there's another challenge of communication, right? So like I spent a lot of time thinking about this. Like, I mean, in some ways I spent like my whole adult life, like decades thinking about this, not necessarily about Bitcoin, but about, the ills of the world and how we might fix that. And for many years, thinking through how Bitcoin could be involved with that. But it's one thing for it to make sense in your head. And it's another thing to express that to other people in a way that makes sense to them. So just communicating the concept of it is I think a challenge, especially early on. Money is a huge challenge. And again, like props to Geyser for helping people out with that challenge, by creating tools for them. And then I think the biggest challenge of all of it has been our desire to do things differently. Because again, I know I use the word revolution and revolutionary, and I mean it, right? Like we're not trying to find success in a dying world. We're trying to build a new one. And that's really, really hard because there's so much gravity. Even if we all recognize that the world is dying, like the institutions and the legacy world is broken and it needs to be replaced. Well, actually, I think there's a lot of disagreement about if it needs to be replaced. I think probably most people think it needs to be improved. I don't think it needs to be improved. I think it needs to be thrown away and replaced. But there's so much gravity to that. There's so much. It really is swimming against the current to try to build something differently. And again, going back to funding, the easiest way, and it's not just the easiest way, it's just how it is so we're a nonprofit. So nonprofits are funded primarily by governments and corporations and all of these piles of money that want to influence the outcome. And we have rejected that from the beginning. We've rejected the idea that we want to help students think a certain way and embrace the idea that we want to help students think for themselves. And it sounds like it wouldn't be that hard to do, but there's so many things, even within the Bitcoin space, that actually follow the models of the legacy world, right? They're not breaking from the legacy world. They're trying to port those models to Bitcoin. And we're not. We're genuinely, legitimately trying to do things differently. So for example, we actually got a bank account earlier this year because we had to receive a grant to a bank account. So we got one, but we existed for 3 years without a bank account, like literally only working on Bitcoin, which was a challenge. It was, all of our staff was paid in Bitcoin, all of our expenses were paid in Bitcoin. We've never accepted, with this one exception earlier this year. So let's say until that point, the first 3 years of the project, we only accepted payment in Bitcoin. We had we have unconferences, we have events and maybe there's tickets for it. We accept donations. And if you did want to, we received some grants, it had to be in Bitcoin. If it wasn't in Bitcoin, then the answer was no, which meant that we turned a lot of things down, but because we wanted to do things differently, right? We didn't want, one thing that I say often, another mantra within the project is we would rather fail at trying to change the world than find success in this one. And to not to just say that, but to actually live that is so much harder than I thought that it was going to be when this journey started, because it makes people that you might have presumed would have been allies into, at best, neutral, because you're kind of challenging their own success, or their own consolidation of power, or their own consolidation of influence. So the hardest thing has been to do things differently and to not follow the templates that have been constructed in the world in which we're trying to replace. The way that we have overcome these challenges, I think a lot of it has to do with myself and the rest of the team. We just really believe in it, right? We're willing to take a harder path, and we're willing to risk failure because we really care about it, because we really want it to succeed, and because we understand that succeeding in the legacy world doesn't actually mean anything, right? Like, who cares? Who cares if you're successful in a dying world, right? Like, I don't. So it's to have that conviction. You know, there have been times when the first 3 years of the project, we basically never had money. Like, I didn't get a salary, and in fact, I contributed to the project financially. So it was like a net loss, financial loss for over 2 years, right? And that's the story of just about everybody in the project. The timeline maybe is different, but almost everybody has given up success, and success could be like a higher paycheck, it could be more recognition, whatever it is, in the legacy world in order to try to build in the emergent one. And there have been so many times when we either ran out of money or we were a week or two away from running out of money. And that's tough. That's it's stressful. It's psychologically challenging. But we made it through because we just really believed that we were on the right path and we were willing to fail. I think in order to succeed, you have to be willing to fail. And we have been willing to fail. I think you're on mute.
It's very interesting that you said that, and very interesting that you said that for 3 years you guys only accepted Bitcoin donations, and you had just one only exception, which I think it's fine. I mean, it's part of life, right? But it's I wanted to talk more about that. So we know that Geyser gives a platform for many people to do that. And what would it be your advice for other people kind of creating initiatives like My First Bitcoin, initiatives in the Bitcoin space related to that? And what do you think that should be a good advice for people that want to stand their ground and okay, I'm going to accept Bitcoin? How should they start that as a main thing?
Yeah. So it depends what you want to do, but kind of a self plug, if you're interested in Bitcoin education, we actually have a program for that. It's called the Node Network, where we try to help people get started. But generally, to get started, I think my advice would be, one, to put a lot of thought into what you want to do and what success looks like for you. Again, don't let anyone else define your success. You define your own success, because if you let someone else define your success, then it's not actually your success, right? You're not actually changing anything. So think through your idea, know what you want, know what success looks like, know what you're not willing to compromise on, and be sure about it. Have conviction about it. Be willing to change when it's important. It sounds contradictory, but it's really important to be willing to change based on a change in environment, and you know, when new data comes in, then you should reevaluate things. But also, that's for the details, right? For the micro, things are going to change a lot, but for the macro, what are you actually trying to achieve, and what is your, what, you know, 10 years, 20 years, what do you want to look back on? You know, day to day, that's going to change a lot, but have a lot of conviction in the big picture. And if you have a lot of conviction, then you're going to be willing to persevere through challenging times, because there will be challenges. There will be more challenges than you probably think there will be. And if you don't have really solid conviction, then you'll probably give up, or you'll probably give in. So just be sure, define your own success.
That's really good advice. I think for us to kind of move towards the end of this interview, I wanted to ask you, what was the biggest, you know, like, you have dealt with a lot of people, you impacted a lot of lives. Is there any specific story that you would like to share about someone impacted through My First Bitcoin? And what is maybe like the story that marked you the most in a way? I think that would be nice to share with our public.
That's a good question. I feel like I should have a stock answer for that. Not a stock answer, but it. You know, yeah. So it won't be about an individual. It will be about a little bit bigger than that. But last year in December 2024, I went to the African Bitcoin conference in Kenya, and you know, I had never been to Kenya before. We work with Bitcoin educators around the world, something that we're increasingly leaning into, but that was already the case at the end of 2024. And I knew that, right? Like and some of them I had communicated with, you know, by email, maybe even a video call. But to be there in Kenya, so the day before the African Bitcoin conference, one of the education projects that we work with that is based in Nairobi, where the conference was, they had a Bitcoin diploma graduation, which is our flagship product, right? Our flagship workbook. It's this 10-week program from zero to Bitcoin, basically. And I had been to, we have these graduations. I've been to, I don't know how many I've been to in El Salvador, but a lot, and they're always special. But when I went to the Bitcoin diploma graduation in Kenya, and they had their own flavor to it, right? Like how it was organized and who spoke. It was kind of like this mini conference before the conference built around Bitcoin education. It was so amazing to be there and to see with my own eyes the impact that it had. And what was really incredible about this graduation was they had a lot of past, because they had been doing it for a year, I think almost 2 years at that point. So they had a lot of past students that had gone on to found their own projects in Nairobi and around Kenya. And they got up on stage and they talked about like how this education had impacted them and put them on a different course, and it made them reevaluate their life, and they quit their job and they started doing this instead. And I got to meet them. One, I got to hear their stories, and two, I got to meet them and have like these personal conversations with them. And like I kind of knew that was happening, but man, to go to Kenya in a very different place, right? It wasn't going to like Honduras or even the United States where I'm more familiar with how things work there, but to go to a very foreign place and see the impact that it had on this one project and how that impact had already started to like mushroom out was so incredible and so inspiring to see. And my son was there, and I got to say a few words. My son was like a year and a half at the time. I got to say a few words at the graduation, and my son like got out of his seat and walked up, and I picked him up and brought him up on stage. So it was like this perfect moment of like, he's the representation of the future to me, and to share that with my son too. It was just like perfect. It was just everything came together. So it was the sort of thing that's like, well, it doesn't matter how hard it gets tomorrow, because that was amazing and that's going to keep me going.
It's so interesting to see the impact that we do when we actually go somewhere. I think for me that was really big when I went to El Salvador as well, seeing the people, talking to people. In my previous job, we were talking about a lot about crossing the chasm, and last year being able to see that in person in adopting Bitcoin in El Salvador, seeing as well you guys' job there was so nice. So I definitely see what you're saying there. It's so cool. And for us to end, if you want to say anything about the project, I know adopting Bitcoin El Salvador is coming up. So if you have any invites, anything you'd like to say to our audience, this is your time. So yeah.
Yeah. What's the timeline on this? When is this? Will this be coming?
So yeah, I don't have a super set date. I'll delete this part that we're talking, but it's I don't have a super set date, but probably in a week or two I'll upload this.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know if it would be relevant to like
Yeah,
mention things in November.
but if you want to mention, I can just put that. I'll work on that and then post next Monday, so it's good.
Yeah, perfect. Sorry. I guess we're in the editing part now. So it was
Yeah, yeah.
like
Just
kind
say
of a closing
I'll
message.
record it. Yeah, yeah. You can just say what you want to say and then I'll edit that out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the most important thing, the best advice that I could give is if you want to live in a different world, if you want to live in a better world, you have to create it. No one will do it for you. You have to take the initiative. And there's no better time than today to get started. With my first Bitcoin, we're really looking forward. There's a whole lot coming up next month in November. In El Salvador, on November 12th, we'll be having a gala celebration to celebrate independent Bitcoin education. On the 13th, we're going to have a independent Bitcoin educators unconference, which is just an amazing thing. If you're interested in Bitcoin education and you are interested in becoming a better Bitcoin educator, and I think we all are Bitcoin educators, right? Like, I'm not talking about you have to be standing in front of a classroom. It's just with your neighbors, with your family, with everyone. If you want to, it's basically a forum to learn from each other so we could all become better Bitcoin educators. That's on November 13th. That's a really amazing event. And then, adopting Bitcoin that's the next day, 14, 15. So it's a great time to come down and visit, to experience, to connect with people. And then going forward, we have the Bitcoin educators on conferences around the world. So wherever you are, there's probably one coming soon to you. So pay attention to our socials, to our website, which is just myfirstbitcoin.io. Also, we want to work with Bitcoin educators everywhere. So you could also find out more information about how to join the Node network, also on our website. So that's just myfirstbitcoin.io, and we're really looking forward to building a better future together.
Thank you so much, John. It was a pleasure. I hope a lot of success for you guys moving forward. If you want to check out their project on Geyser, we're live there. And I hope the events in El Salvador go along really well. I'm in Madrid right now, so I won't be able to join this year, but next year I'll be there. Last year I was, and next year I'll be there. And thank you so much for your time, and hope we can see each other in person soon. And hopefully
Thank you.
here on a conference here in Madrid.
Yeah, sounds
Okay,
good.
bye.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Bye. Let me stop.